Did you know that fewer than 20% of cases are detected and treated in elderly depression? Elderly depression is not a normal thing of aging and is very misdiagnosed. It is important to know the signs and symptoms, the factors, and why it is so misdiagnosed in elderly depression. To start off, what is elderly depression? The New England Journal of Medicine article on depression in the elderly describes depression as depression is a psychiatric syndrome frequently encountered by physicians who treat older adults. So what are some signs and symptoms of elderly depression? Elderly depression can often be seen as overeating or appetite loss, thoughts of suicide and suicidal attempts, persistent aches or pains, insomnia, early morning wakefulness or excessive sleeping, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness. These are classic signs of elderly depression. If you are concerned about one of your loved ones, make sure you ask your doctor about these signs and symptoms and just be on the lookout. So why is elderly depression so misdiagnosed? Well, the signs of elderly depression can be a reaction to any illness, or it can just be signs that we're aging. For example, if we look back at the signs and symptoms, you can see that persistent pains and aches is one of the signs and symptoms. Well, that can just be a reaction to aging, or it could be a reaction to just exercising more. It is very hard to tell the difference between it being just depression or just aging. So what makes the elderly susceptible to depression? Some factors include marital status, living situation. Your marital status is a huge part of elderly depression. A lot of the times when their partner ends up passing away, they can get depressed really easily. Which brings me to living situation. In the living situation, a lot of the times you see elderly in nursing homes and assisted livings. By living by themselves, and like everybody else who lives alone, they get lonely sometimes, or even get sad that their families won't come and visit. Also, elderly sometimes get depressed by the mobility status. Some elderly can't even walk and have to be helped, and some don't want the help and get upset because they used to be able to do it when they were younger. I personally have witnessed elderly depression. My grandpa has fallen into depression since my grandma had died in 2016. My grandma was everything to him, and they were the perfect couple. And when she had passed away, my grandpa started to have more and more medical issues. He now has been diagnosed with diabetes, edema in his legs, and he doesn't really take care of himself. He has fallen into depression, and he shows many symptoms of the signs and symptoms that I brought up before. He eats excessively a lot, and he knows that he's not taking care of himself, and he has said in the past that he's okay to die because he wants to be with his wife. It is very hard to watch someone with depression, and very, very hard to help someone with depression. Another time that I have witnessed elderly depression is when I used to work in a facility that assisted the elderly. I used to pass out medication to the elderly, and a lot of the times they would love for me to stay in their room and chat with them because that is the only social activity that they had. It was also really sad to see when their family was not coming to see them because they would also get depressed about that. I have seen a lot of normal elderly adults who don't have depression and elderly adults who do, and you can easily tell the difference. They have the classic signs, they eat less, they don't really take care of themselves, and they don't really care what happens to them. Learning about elderly depression is very important to me I've seen it in my assisted livings and I've seen it in my grandpa. It is very important to know the signs and symptoms, the factors, and why is it so misdiagnosed.